My grandma turned 79, but no one came to her party. She sat alone at the table, one candle flickering on her cake, while my parents were off skiing in Aspen. The next morning, I went to help her clean up. Halfway through, there was a knock at the door. Two men in suits stood there, holding a leather folder. One looked at me and said, "Are you her grandchild?" Then he handed it to me. Inside was a document signed by Grandma herself. What happened next hit like a storm, shattering every smug assumption my parents ever had. No one, not even me, saw it coming. I thought I knew my family, but the truth hit me like a tidal wave. They hadn't just forgotten the woman who raised them, they'd actively betrayed her, selling off her entire life for their own selfish gain. And I? I was about to stand directly in their path. My name's Devin Hayes. I'm 23, a first-year law student here in Boulder, Colorado. This city, nestled against the Rockies, it's beautiful, rugged. The air here, it feels like freedom. But for me, Boulder was more than just pretty scenery, it was my escape. A chance to prove I wasn't the invisible kid my family always treated me as. See, I grew up in Castle Rock, a much quieter, smaller place. On the surface, our family looked perfect, you know, the kind you see in glossy magazines. But underneath, it was cracking. My dad, Richard, a real estate investor, tall and lean, with eyes that always seemed to be calculating, always measuring worth in dollars. He wasn't big on warmth or heart-to-heart talks. He once declared at dinner, flat as a financial report, old people should know their place and not be a burden to their children. I just sat there, head bowed, swallowing the burning anger, because I knew exactly who he was talking about, my grandmother. My mom, Cynthia, was the opposite, but no better. A perfectly coiffed administrative manager at a cosmetic surgery center, always with glossy red nails and a practiced smile. She was a perfectionist, obsessed with appearances. And in her world, perfection came with comparison. And I? I was always the one who fell short. Look at Kyle, Devin. Learn from him. He knows how to make things happen, she'd beam, her voice overflowing with pride for my older brother. Kyle, 29, was the golden child. MBA, tech startup in Austin, luxury apartment, international trips, glowing articles. The embodiment of success. But I knew the truth. His company was a house of cards, teetering on bankruptcy. A mutual friend spilled that he'd taken out a massive loan just to stay afloat. But for my parents, Kyle was the untouched idol. "Devin, why can't you be a bit more like your brother?" Mom would ask, pure disappointment in her eyes. I just offered a hollow smile. There was no point in arguing. She wouldn't listen. Then there's Avery, my 19-year-old sister, a social media superstar. Lively, outgoing, always smiling, hundreds of likes on her happy family Instagram photos. But if you looked closely, you'd notice something. I was never in them. Once, I half-jokingly asked, "Hey, why don't you ever tag me?" She just laughed, a carefree but utterly cutting sound. "Oh, Devin, you're so busy with law school. Who'd dare bother you?" I knew the real reason. For Avery, I was just a faint smudge on her perfect family portrait. The only person who ever truly saw me, truly listened, was my grandmother, Lorraine Hayes. She lived alone in a small, weathered house outside Fort Collins, about an hour and a half from my school. Her place was a sanctuary. Chipped wooden frames, a wild garden she still tended, even nearing 80. Grandma was petite, with snow-white hair and warm brown eyes that sparkled with kindness. She'd always say, "Devin, as long as you live true to your heart, that's enough." Those words, they meant more than any hollow praise for my parents. I remember summers in Castle Rock, when my parents were busy and Kyle was off collecting accolades. I'd run to Grandma's. She'd sit in her armchair, telling me stories about my grandfather, a dedicated lawyer who inspired me to pursue law. "The law isn't just about winning cases, Devin," she'd say in her gentle, steady voice. "It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves." I felt seen. Understood. A feeling I never got at home. But after Grandpa passed 4 years ago, things began to shift. Grandma wasn't as sharp. Sometimes she called me Henry, Grandpa's name. Other times, she'd forget what day it was. Her memory was slipping, I could see it. Yet, she was physically strong, still cooking, still gardening, even if she occasionally forgot why she was doing it. I worried. But when I brought it up to my parents, they'd just shrug it off. She's old, Devon. Forgetfulness is normal, Dad would say, his voice colder than ice. Mom added, why are you worrying? She has her own house, her pension. She can take care of herself. How could they talk about the woman who raised them, who loved them fiercely, like she was some useless object? This feeling of being forgotten, it was a contagion in my family. One Christmas, I brought thoughtful gifts, a law book for Kyle, a knitted scarf for Mom, a landscape painting for Dad. Not a single mention at dinner. Mom just prattled on about Kyle's Europe trip, Dad grilled Avery about her summer plans. I sat there, eating cold cuts, feeling like an uninvited guest. When I cleared the table, Avery didn't even glance up from her phone. Thanks, Devon, she mumbled, a tone that just screamed, get it over with. I'm not one to hold grudges. I'd learned to accept my place outside their spotlight. But deep down, I always hoped they'd truly see me, just once, the way Grandma did. She was the only one who remembered my birthday, who asked about my dreams, my fears. Every visit, she'd make tea, sit, and truly listen as I talked about law school, tough exams, or just the sunset over Boulder Lake. No judgment. No comparisons. With her, I wasn't invisible. I was Devon, her grandson, the one she loved. Still, a distance grew between us. Not because I didn't want to be there, but because of life, and an hour-and-a-half drive. As a first-year law student, I was buried in coursework, study groups, late-night exams. I'd call her, promising myself, this weekend, I'll visit. But then the weekend would come, and I'd be swallowed by deadlines, friends, or just sheer exhaustion. I'd reassure myself, she's fine. She can manage, but deep down, I knew I was just making excuses. Then, one Friday afternoon, everything changed. I got a text from Grandma. Short and simple, Devon, are you free this weekend? I made a birthday cake and want you to try it. My heart seized. Her 79th birthday. I'd almost forgotten. Guilt washed over me. I checked my schedule. Clear. I'll be there, Grandma. Wait for me, I texted back, a wave of relief, then unease, hitting me. I didn't know that text was the calm before a storm. The start of a truth I never could have seen coming. A truth that would force me to confront the very people I once called family. The drive from Boulder to Fort Collins felt endless. My mind raced. Was Grandma really okay? Why did this visit feel different? I had a small gift, a wooden photo frame I'd made, with a picture of her in her garden, smiling brightly. A rare, happy moment after Grandpa passed. I hoped it would remind her I was always there. Turning onto her street, my heart tightened. The house. Small, weathered, faded gray roof. Her wild garden, still blooming with daisies and lavender. But something was off. It was too quiet. No smoke from the chimney, no warm light in the living room. I told myself she was just resting, or maybe busy with her cake. I parked, grabbed my bag, and pushed open the creaky wooden door. Grandma, I'm here. I called, trying to sound cheerful, but only silence answered. The familiar scent of old wood and herbal tea filled the air. The living room was exactly as it always was, her floral armchair, the small table with dried flowers, Grandpa's wedding photo. But the silence, it was eerie. No footsteps, no soft humming. Grandma? I called again, my voice low now, laced with worry. I found her in the kitchen. Sitting alone at the dining table. Before her, a small, beautiful birthday cake, white frosting, strawberries. She wore the light blue sweater I'd given her last year, her silver hair neatly tied back. But her expression, it stopped my heart cold. Empty. Lost. As if she were staring into another world, not this kitchen. Grandma, it's me, I said, stepping closer, forcing a smile. She looked up, her warm brown eyes brightening just a touch as she recognized me. Devon, she whispered, her voice frail but full of affection. You're here. I made this cake. Then she paused, looking down at the cake, then back at me, her eyes clouded with confusion. Why did I make it? Is it someone's birthday? It felt like a punch to the gut. Her 79th birthday. She had forgotten. I fought to keep my voice steady, sat beside her, and gently took her hand. It was cold. Fragile. Her thin fingers trembled. It's your birthday, Grandma, I said, as softly as I could. I came to eat cake with you. She smiled, a weak, processing kind of smile. Oh, my birthday, she repeated, looking at the cake. So, I must have made this for myself. But, why are you the only one here? Where are your parents? Your siblings? Her question sliced me open. I scanned the empty kitchen. No one. No Dad, Mom, Kyle, Avery. The table was set for two. 2 small plates, 2 old forks. No decorations, no flowers, no gifts, not even a card. Just her. Her cake. And me. They must be busy, Grandma, I lied, the anger a hot, bitter taste in my mouth. But I'm here now. Let's eat some cake. I cut her a slice. She nodded, but her eyes remained distant. We ate in silence, the only sound the ticking wall clock. The cake was delicious, but every bite felt like ash. The truth was dawning on me. After we finished, I cleared the table, trying to act normal. Grandma watched me, then suddenly, Devin, have you seen your grandfather? He said he'd be home for my birthday. My heart clenched again. Grandpa had been gone for 4 years. I didn't know what to say. So I just held her hand, offered a broken smile, and lied to comfort her. Grandpa's at the market, Grandma. Don't worry. He'll be back soon. She nodded, but I knew she didn't truly understand. I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped onto the porch, pulled out my phone, and dialed. It rang. And rang. Finally, Dad picked up. Devin, what's up? His voice was cold, annoyed, like I was interrupting something important. Today's Grandma's birthday, I said, fighting to keep my voice from shaking. Why isn't anyone here? Where is everybody? A long, chilling pause. Then, flatly, oh, we're all skiing in Aspen. Kyle wanted the whole family to go. Your mom and Avery are with him. Weather's nice this weekend, you know. My face burned. Skiing? I choked, my voice trembling. You knew it was Grandma's birthday. Why didn't anyone tell me about the trip? Why isn't anyone here with her? Devin, calm down, Dad cut in, his impatience clear. It's just a birthday. They happen every year. Besides, Grandma has you there, right? Your mom sent her some money last week. She's not lacking anything. I hung up. I couldn't listen to another word. I looked back at Grandma, still sitting there, her fingers fiddling with the tablecloth, her eyes lost. The anger inside me ignited like a wildfire. My family. The people I'd yearned to belong to. They hadn't just forgotten me, they'd abandoned her. The woman who had poured her life into loving and caring for them was now disposable. Not worth their time. I sank back down beside her, fighting tears. Grandma, can I stay with you for a few days? I asked. She looked at me and smiled, but it was a hollow, lifeless smile. You're such a good boy, Devin, she whispered. Just like your grandfather. That night, I lay on the old living room bed, listening to the wind howl through the window gaps. The house was cold, but my heart felt colder. My parents. Kyle. Avery. Those perfect family photos I was never in. How easily they'd discarded Grandma, the heart of our family. What made them this way? How could I protect her? Hold on to the love I once believed in? I didn't know. But I knew this storm was just beginning. The truth I was about to uncover would change everything, forcing me to stand up, not just for Grandma, but for myself. After that devastating birthday, I couldn't just go back to Boulder. I took a few days off school, a vague family matters excuse. But really, I just couldn't leave Grandma alone. Couldn't shake the image of her, forgotten, beside her own birthday cake. Her house, old as it was, remained a sanctuary. Every morning, I'd make her tea, join her in the garden. She'd sit, watching me pull weeds, her voice frail but proud. "You're good at gardening, Devon." I'd just smile, a lump in my throat. I wasn't just helping her, I was holding on to every precious moment in this house, a place steeped in Grandpa's memory, a place where I still felt a faint sense of belonging. In the afternoons, the golden sunlight would stream through the windows as we revisited old stories. She'd tell me about Grandpa, a passionate young lawyer in Fort Collins. "The law is about protecting justice, Devon, but justice isn't always found in books," she'd say, her eyes lighting up. I absorbed every word, these stories my last link to the man who inspired me to law. But sometimes, mid-sentence, her eyes would cloud. "What's your name again?" she'd ask, trembling. In those moments, I'd just hold her hand. "I'm Devon, your grandson, the one who will always be here to protect you." She'd nod, but the bewilderment in her eyes was heartbreaking. Her memory was fading, piece by agonizing piece. I tried to keep things normal, cleaning, fixing a leaky faucet, sweeping leaves. But a cold dread began to settle in. Something was wrong. The house felt like it was holding a secret. I started noticing little things, papers scattered on her desk, a brown envelope tucked into a drawer I'd never seen. I hated snooping, but worry gnawed at me. One morning, while Grandma napped, I opened the envelope. Inside, bank documents, bills, and a handwritten note. Not Grandma's handwriting. It was sharp, rigid, exactly like my father's. "Meet the buyer. Tuesday, 10 a.m. buyer?" Buying what? I dismissed it, telling myself it was probably just one of Dad's real estate deals, maybe he just jotted it down here. But that small voice, deep inside, screamed, "Something's not right." On my last day before heading back to Boulder, I was dusting the bookshelf when a firm, deliberate knock rattled the door. Not a neighbor. Not the mailman. I opened it to a middle-aged couple, impeccably dressed. The man in a gray suit, a leather briefcase in hand. The woman in beige, a polite but strained smile. "Hello," the man said, his voice even. "I'm Bob, and this is Susan Miller. We're here to take possession of the house." I froze. Doused in ice water. "Take possession?" I stammered, my voice failing. "This house isn't for sale." "You must be mistaken." He frowned, then pulled a stack of papers from his briefcase. "No, we're not mistaken." He handed me a document. "We signed a contract to buy this house from Mr. Richard Hayes and Mrs. Lorraine Hayes. This is the deed of transfer, signed by Mrs. Lorraine. We're here for a final inspection before moving in." The world stopped spinning. I took the paper, my eyes blurring over the dense text, but one thing stood out, Grandma's shaky signature at the bottom. Uneven. Slightly slanted. Just like on my birthday cards. But why would she sell this house? Her whole life was here. Every memory with Grandpa. "My grandmother didn't sell this house," I said, my voice hardening, rising. "There's a mistake. She's not in a state to sign things like this." My face flushed, my hand crushing the paper. Susan, the woman, looked at me with pity. "We're very sorry if something's unclear," she said softly. "But we worked directly with Mr. Richard. He said Mrs. Lorraine agreed and signed in our presence. We've already paid the deposit." My mind went utterly blank. My father did this. I glanced back into the house, where Grandma was still napping, oblivious. "Please wait here," I managed, closing the door. I had to talk to her. I gently touched her shoulder. "Grandma, can you wake up? I need to ask you something." She opened her eyes, sleepy. "Devon, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice faint. I sat beside her, holding her hand, keeping my tone as gentle as possible. "Grandma, do you remember signing any papers recently? Papers about this house?" My heart hammered. She frowned, digging through the fog of her memory. "Papers?" she repeated, vague. "I don't quite remember. A few days ago, Richard came by with someone. They told me to sign something." Her words stabbed me. I stood, a raw mix of anger and pain surging. My father. He had taken advantage of her. Exploited her confusion, made her sign a contract she didn't understand. This house. Her life. Sold. Behind her back. Behind mine. I walked back to the door. Bob stood tall, briefcase still in hand, his eyes cold. Susan offered another awkward smile. My hand gripped the deed so tight my knuckles were white. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. "There's been a huge mistake. My grandmother isn't capable of signing this contract. I'll handle this. Please leave." Bob frowned. "Devin, is it?" His tone was calm, firm. "We understand you're surprised, but the contract is signed. Everything is legal. Notarized. 1 week from now, we'll be moving in. We hope your family can arrange to clear out and leave by then." 1 week. The words hit me like a physical blow. 1 week? My voice broke. "You don't understand. This is my grandmother's house. She'd never want to sell it." My face burned. My breathing quickened. Susan stepped forward, her voice softer. "We're very sorry, Devin. But we work directly with Mr. Richard Hayes. He said Mrs. Lorraine agreed and she signed in our presence. If there's an issue, you should talk to your father." I wanted to scream. To throw the deed in their faces. To tell them they were tearing Grandma's life apart. But Bob's cold, unyielding gaze silenced me. Arguing now was useless. "Thank you for letting me know," I said, my voice bone dry. "I'll take care of this." I slammed the door, not waiting for their response, and leaned against the old wood, feeling the world crumble beneath me. I looked around the house. The armchair where she told stories. The wedding photo of her and Grandpa. The lavender bushes swaying outside. All of it. Sold. By my father. Like some disposable commodity. And now I had 1 week. 1 week to stop it. Grandma, the woman I loved most, betrayed by her own son. And I, who thought I could protect her, had been utterly blind. I grabbed my phone, dialing Dad. Each ring was a knife in my chest. Finally, he picked up. "Devin, what's it now?" Cold. Annoyed. "Dad, I want the truth," I said, my voice firm despite my hammering heart. "You forced Grandma to sign a contract to sell her house, didn't you? She didn't know what she was signing. You took advantage of her confusion to sell this house. Why? For what?" A long, agonizing silence. Then, his voice, calm but strained, "Devin, you're blowing this out of proportion. She agreed. She signed. Everything's legal. You weren't here. You don't know. Legal?" I cut him off, my voice rising, beyond holding back. "You call it legal to coerce someone who isn't mentally sound into signing papers? You knew her memory was struggling. You knew she couldn't understand what she was signing. And now they're moving in a week. Where's Grandma supposed to go? A nursing home? Out on the street? Don't talk to me like that." Dad snapped, the first time I'd ever heard him lose his composure. "You think I did this for fun? Do you know how much debt Kyle is in? His company is on the verge of bankruptcy. If we don't help him, the whole family will lose everything. Grandma's house, it's just an old house. She doesn't need it anymore. We'll find somewhere else for her." I was stunned. Like a physical slap. Kyle. It was all for Kyle. Dad had sold Grandma's house, her sanctuary, her entire life's memories, to save Kyle's failing company. Anger surged through me, but underneath, a searing pain. Betrayal. "So, you chose Kyle over Grandma?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "You're willing to sacrifice her to save him, aren't you?" Dad was silent. I heard him sigh. No explanation. No apology. "Devin, you don't understand," he finally said, his voice cold again. "This is for the good of the whole family. You need to grow up and accept it." I hung up, my hands shaking so violently I nearly dropped the phone. The good of the whole family, those words cut deeper than any knife. Weren't Grandma and I part of that family? I sank into a chair, my mind reeling. Did Mom know? Did Avery, with her perfect Instagram life, know Grandma was being pushed out of her own home? I called Mom. No answer. I texted, Mom, I need to talk. It's about Grandma. Urgent. 30 minutes. No reply. No call back. My heart felt crushed. I tried Avery. No answer. I texted, Avery, do you know about Grandma's house being sold? What do you think? Silence. No surprise there. Avery always avoided confrontation, always sided with our parents. I sat there, in Grandma's living room, feeling utterly, profoundly alone. My family, the people I thought I belonged to, had betrayed not just Grandma, but me too. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, my love for Grandma on one side, the brutal truth about my family on the other. I didn't know what to do. But I knew one thing, I couldn't let this stand. The very next morning, I decided I wasn't letting this happen. I called my civil law professor, Margaret Stein. She was strict, but fair, and once told our class, the law is meant to protect the vulnerable, if you know how to use it. My voice shook as I briefly explained the situation. Grandma, coerced into signing a contract when she wasn't mentally competent. What can I do, Professor? How do I stop this? Professor Stein was quiet for a moment. Then, Devin, if your grandmother lacked mental capacity, the contract could be void. But you'll need evidence. Medical records, witnesses, anything to prove she wasn't aware. A flicker of hope ignited in my chest. I'll try. Thank you, Professor. First stop, Dr. Harris at the local clinic in Fort Collins. He'd been treating Grandma. I laid out the bare facts, and he nodded. I'll provide copies of her medical records, he said. 6 months ago, we noted significant cognitive decline. She often confuses time, forgets recent events. A wave of relief washed over me. A ray of light in the suffocating darkness. But I knew it wasn't enough. I needed more. My mind went to Mrs. Helen, Grandma's neighbor, who often chatted with her. That evening, I knocked on Mrs. Helen's door. She greeted me with a sad smile, confirming Grandma's memory issues. She even remembered seeing my father bring 2 strangers to Grandma's house a couple of weeks ago. Bingo. That felt like the final piece of the puzzle. I was relieved, yes, but also furious. It was painfully clear, my father had deliberately taken advantage of Grandma, knowing full well she couldn't understand what she was doing. That night, I sat in Grandma's living room, drafting a plan. Medical records. Mrs. Helen's testimony. And if I had to, I'd even ask the Millers, the buyers, for help. But 1 week? 1 week wasn't enough to prepare a case. I had to get Grandma out of here. I couldn't risk the Millers returning with keys, claiming possession. The next morning, I gently helped Grandma pack. Grandma, I want to take you to my place for a few days, I said, trying to make it sound like a fun trip. Boulder's beautiful. You'll like it. Her eyes were hazy, but a glimmer of trust shone through. You want me to go with you, Devin? She asked, frail. I don't want to be a burden. You are never a burden, Grandma, I insisted, fighting back tears. I want you close to me, just for a few days. She nodded, a weak smile. I packed her favorite clothes, her well-used notebook, and the wedding photo of her and Grandpa. As I put the photo in the bag, she suddenly clutched my hand. Don't lose it, Devin, she whispered. It's a memory of me and your grandfather. My throat tightened. I wouldn't lose anything of hers. Not the photo. Not the house. Not her memories. The drive to Boulder was quiet. Grandma stared out the window, murmuring occasionally about the dry fields or the mountains. My mind, though, was miles away, consumed by my family. How could they do this? How could they treat the woman who raised them, who loved them, like something to be discarded? My student apartment in Boulder was tiny. Just a bed, a desk, a small kitchen. I gave Grandma the bed, laying a blanket on the floor for myself. She looked around, smiling. This place is cozy, Devin. Are you doing okay here? I nodded, lying. It wasn't meant for her. No garden, no comfy armchair, no space for her fading memories. But here, at least, she was safe. Here, I could protect her. With the medical records and Mrs. Helen's testimony, I felt a surge of confidence. But I still needed answers. Where did the money from the house sale go? I called Kyle. The phone rang a few times. Devin, long time no talk, he said, trying for cheerful, but the tension was there. What's up? You know about Dad selling Grandma's house, don't you? I cut straight to it. You know he coerced her into signing a contract when she wasn't lucid. Did the money from the house go to your company's account? Explain, Kyle. A long pause. Then, a sigh, his voice dropping. Devin, you don't understand. My company's in serious trouble. I owe a huge amount of money. If I don't pay it off, everything I've built will collapse. Mom and Dad just wanted to help me. Help you? I nearly screamed. By selling Grandma's house? By taking advantage of her? Do you know where she is right now? She's in my tiny apartment because Mom and Dad were about to push her out of her own home. Have you ever thought about her, Kyle? Or do you only ever think about yourself? Don't talk to me like that. Kyle snapped, his voice thick with anger. You think I wanted this? You think I like relying on Mom and Dad? You have no idea what I'm dealing with, Devin. You're just a kid studying law, sitting there judging everyone. I hung up, my heart pounding. His words cut deep, but they confirmed it all. My family had chosen Kyle, his interests, his reputation, and discarded Grandma like something worthless. I sat there, watching Grandma sleep, utterly betrayed. No one in my family, except me, truly cared for or respected her. They'd turned her into a means to an end, a sacrifice to preserve their perfect family image. I opened my laptop. I wasn't drafting an apology or an explanation. I was drafting a notice of intent to sue. Elder abuse. Avoidable civil transaction due to lack of mental capacity. I emailed the draft to Professor Stein, asking if I had a chance. Her reply was immediate, Devin, with the evidence you have, this case has merit. But prepare yourself. This isn't just a legal battle. It's a family war. She was right. When I sent that notice to my parents, with copies to Kyle and Avery, the response was instantaneous. Dad called, his voice a guttural growl. Devin, what the hell are you doing? Suing your own parents? You're an ungrateful brat, tearing this family apart. Who do you think you are? Mom called right after, her voice choked, but not with remorse. Devin, how could you do this to us? Do you want the whole world to know our family's a mess? Do you want to destroy Kyle? I didn't respond. Just quietly hung up. Their words held no power over me anymore. They'd chosen their path. And now, I had chosen mine. That night, I sat by the window, moonlight streaming into the small apartment. Grandma's words echoed, the law is for protecting those who can't protect themselves. I would do that. Not just for her, but for myself. To prove I wasn't invisible. I would take this to court. And I would let the truth speak. The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights, frantic phone calls, and relentless preparation. I wasn't a lawyer, just a first-year law student, for crying out loud. But I knew I couldn't let this go. I would fight. I had Grandma's medical records, Mrs. Helen's damning testimony, and all the details of that suspiciously notarized contract. I even reached out to Bob and Susan Miller, the buyers. They were hesitant at first, but Susan, bless her heart, agreed to testify. We didn't know Mrs. Lorraine wasn't lucid, she said, her voice full of sympathy. If we had, we never would have signed that contract. Her words were a glimmer of hope, but I knew this trial wouldn't be easy. I was up against my parents, people who not only had money, but the unshakable conviction that they were always right. Professor Stein became my rock. She couldn't represent me, I couldn't afford a lawyer, and frankly, I wanted to do this myself, but she guided me. Helped me prepare documents, organize my arguments, practice my presentation for the judge. Devon, she drilled into me during one meeting in her office, focus on two things. First, prove Mrs. Lorraine lacked the mental capacity to sign. Second, demonstrate your parents deliberately exploited that. You have the evidence, now present it clearly, persuasively. I nodded, soaking up every word. But every time I imagined standing in court, facing my parents, my heart hammered against my ribs. They weren't just defendants. They were my family. Or, at least, the people I once called family. Would Kyle show up, the golden boy they'd shielded his whole life? Would Avery, silent and uninvolved as ever, dare to look me in the eye? The trial date arrived faster than I expected. The Fort Collins courthouse was small, but solemnly imposing, with dark wooden walls. I wore my old suit, feeling awkward, but reminding myself to project professionalism. Grandma sat beside me, small and fragile in the light blue sweater I'd given her, her silver hair neatly pinned back. I didn't want her to go through this, to hear the painful truths, but I had no choice. This was the only way to protect her. My parents were there early, already seated across the courtroom with their lawyer, a tall, sleek man in a perfectly pressed black suit. Kyle? No sign. Probably too busy with his collapsing empire. Avery? Absent, as expected. She always steered clear of trouble. The courtroom fell silent as the judge, a sharp-eyed, middle-aged woman, entered. She struck her gavel. The trial began. I stood, my voice trembling at first, but growing stronger with each word. Your Honor, I began, looking straight at her, I stand here today to request that the court declare the contract transferring my grandmother's house, Mrs. Lorraine Hayes, null and void. My grandmother has been diagnosed with cognitive decline and lacked the mental capacity to sign this contract. My parents, Mr. Richard and Mrs. Cynthia Hayes, exploited this condition to coerce her into signing, without clearly explaining its contents. I presented the medical records from Dr. Harris, detailing Grandma's diagnosis. I submitted Mrs. Helen's testimony. And then Susan, one of the buyers, took the stand. Hesitant, but honest. Mrs. Lorraine didn't seem well that day, she confirmed. She asked several times who we were, and Mr. Richard had to prompt her to sign. I don't think she understood what was happening. My parents' lawyer, with his deep, confident voice, rose to counter. Your Honor, my clients, Mr. Richard and Mrs. Cynthia Hayes, acted in Mrs. Lorraine's best interests. She signed the contract willingly, it was legally notarized. There is no evidence of coercion. Furthermore, the Hayes family had arranged for Mrs. Lorraine to move into a high-quality nursing facility. The plaintiff, Devon Hayes, is merely an inexperienced law student, blowing this out of proportion due to personal emotions. His words stung. My face burned, but I forced myself to stay calm. He was trying to discredit me, but I wouldn't let him. When it was my turn again, I stood, my voice firm. Your Honor, this isn't about personal emotions. This is about justice. My parents knew my grandmother wasn't lucid. Yet, they pressured her to sign a contract to fund my brother's failing company. They didn't consult her. They didn't explain anything to her. And they didn't care where she'd go after losing her home. I have evidence that the money from this transaction went directly into my brother's company account, not to my grandmother. Then came Grandma's turn to testify. I hadn't wanted her to, but Professor Stein insisted it was critical. I helped her up, holding her hand as she walked to the stand. She looked so small under the harsh courtroom lights, yet there was a quiet strength in her posture. The judge, her voice gentle, asked, Mrs. Lorraine, do you remember signing papers to sell your house? Grandma looked at the judge, her eyes hazy. I'm not sure, she stammered, her voice trembling. My son Richard told me to sign something. I thought it was bank papers. I don't remember clearly. She paused, her eyes welling up. But that's my house. My husband and I lived there our whole lives. I never wanted to leave. Her words hit the courtroom like a hammer. I glanced at my parents. Mom had her head bowed low, clutching her purse. Dad maintained his cold expression, but I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. Their lawyer tried to argue she was lucid, but Susan's testimony, the medical records, Mrs. Helen's statement, it all chipped away at their defense. The trial dragged on, each minute feeling like an hour. When the judge called a recess to deliberate, I helped Grandma to a hallway bench. "You did great, Devon," she said, her voice faint but proud. I smiled, a storm of emotions raging inside me: anger, pain, hope. That afternoon, the judge returned with her ruling. Based on the evidence presented, she announced, her voice clear and authoritative, "The court declares the contract transferring Mrs. Lorraine Hayes' house null and void, as she lacked the mental capacity at the time of signing. Furthermore, the court grants temporary guardianship to Devon Hayes to ensure Mrs. Lorraine's best interests." A stunned silence fell over the courtroom. Then, I heard Mrs. Helen's audible sigh of relief from the spectator benches. I held Grandma's hand, feeling her squeeze mine tightly. I looked at my parents. Dad stood. He walked out of the courtroom without a single glance my way. Mom followed, her head still bowed. They didn't say a word. But I knew they'd lost. Not just in court, but to the truth they'd desperately tried to hide. Leaving the courthouse, the afternoon sun was fading behind the Rockies. I helped Grandma into the car, feeling a strange mix of relief and profound sadness. I had won. But at what cost? Had I just destroyed my family? When Grandma looked at me, though, a genuine, loving smile on her face, and said, "You're my pride, Devon," I knew I'd done the right thing. The truth had been laid bare. And I kept my promise to her, and to Grandpa, who taught me that the law is for protecting those who can't protect themselves. The drive back to Grandma's house felt heavier than ever. Not because of the distance, but the weight in my heart. Grandma sat beside me, frail hands in her lap, her gaze dreamy on the twilight Rockies. Their snow-capped peaks a stark reminder that the world kept moving, even as mine had been turned upside down. I had won. Grandma's house was safe. But this victory wasn't pure joy. My parents, Kyle, Avery, they'd walked out of that courtroom without a single backward glance. They were my family. But now I wasn't sure if I still belonged to them. We pulled up to her house. The small garden, the lavender bushes still swaying resiliently in the breeze. It felt like the house itself was waiting for us. I helped her out, setting her bag on the floor. Her eyes brightened slightly, as if truly recognizing it for the first time in a long while. "This is our home, isn't it, Devon?" she asked, her voice soft, filled with emotion. "Yes, Grandma," I replied, a genuine smile finally breaking through. "This is your home. And it will always be your home." I led her to her armchair, helped her settle in, and brewed her favorite herbal tea, mint and chamomile. As I placed the cup in her hands, she grasped mine, squeezing lightly. "You're a good boy, Devon," she said, her voice a soft echo of the past. "Just like your grandfather when he was young." Her words made my heart ache, a sweet, painful ache. I knelt beside her, looking into her warm brown eyes, now so often lost. "Grandma, I'm going to stay here with you for a while," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I want to make sure you're okay." She smiled, but uncertainty clouded her eyes. "You don't need to do that, Devon," she whispered. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're never a burden," I insisted, fighting back tears. "You're the most important person to me." And I meant it with every fiber of my being. Over the past weeks, fighting to save her home, I'd realized something profound: Grandma wasn't just someone I wanted to protect. She was the only person who truly saw me, who loved me without comparison or judgment. The decision to put law school on hold, to set aside those dreams of a grand career, wasn't easy. But looking at Grandma, sipping her tea, I knew there was no other choice. Law school would still be there. But Grandma wouldn't. Her time was slipping away, day by day, memory by memory. I wanted to be with her, to hold on to every precious moment we had left. I reorganized my life around her. Moved some clothes, some books from Boulder. Called Professor Stein, explaining I needed a semester off. She was silent for a moment, then, "Devon, you've accomplished something many seasoned lawyers never do. You protected someone who needed it most. Law school will always welcome you back. Take care of your grandmother." Her words were a balm, reminding me that the road ahead, while challenging, was the right one. My new routine in Fort Collins became my anchor. Morning tea, tending the garden with Grandma. She, despite her fading memory, would show me how to water, how to trim. "Plants are like people, Devon," she said once, her voice dreamy. You have to care for them, love them, for them to thrive. I nodded, knowing she was talking about us. In the afternoons, we'd sit, and I'd listen to her stories, Grandpa, their youth, childhood picnics. Sometimes she'd call me James, and I wouldn't correct her. I'd just smile, hold her hand, and let her live in those cherished memories. These moments, however fleeting, were everything. But the rift with my birth family remained an unhealed wound. My parents never contacted me. A mutual friend told me Dad was furious, calling me an ungrateful son. Mom stayed silent, preserving her perfect image by simply erasing me. Kyle sent one text, "You've ruined everything, Devin. Hope you're happy." I never replied. Avery kept posting her happy Instagram photos, but I was no longer in any of them. I didn't regret it. They chose their path. I chose mine. One evening, as I cleaned the kitchen, Grandma called me. "Devin, come here." Her voice, soft but clear. I sat beside her. She was holding the wedding photo of her and Grandpa. "You know," she said, her eyes bright with a rare clarity, "your grandfather always said you'd do something great. I see him in you. The way you fight. The way you don't give up." Tears welled up in my eyes. "I just wanted to do what's right, Grandma," I whispered. "I learned that from you and Grandpa." She smiled, and then, suddenly, called me by his name. "James, you always make me proud." I didn't correct her. I just held her hand, letting her live in that moment, where she and Grandpa were still together. In the months that followed, I truly understood the lessons this journey had etched into my soul. Family isn't just blood, it's about those who truly see you, truly love you. Justice isn't just winning a lawsuit, it's standing up for what's right, no matter how painful the cost. And sometimes, the only person who still remembers you, truly remembers you, is the one you should never forget. One afternoon, in the garden, watching the sunset paint the Rockies, I thought about the future. I knew I'd go back to law school. Finish my dream of becoming a lawyer, like Grandpa. But now, I wasn't chasing ambition to prove myself to anyone else. I was doing it for me. For Grandma. For everyone who needs protection. As the last rays faded, Grandma took my hand and smiled. "You're my home, Devin," she said. I squeezed her hand, my heart full. My birth family might have fractured, the road ahead might still be challenging, but I knew, definitively, where I belonged. Right here. With Grandma. In this house full of memories. Sometimes, the only person who still remembers you is the one you should never forget.